Transformation is about creating a culture that creates the context for the manifestation or the desire to be embraced by the organization. Right? Because that's the question you're asking, right? How do we make sure it gets embraced by the organization, they live into it? That's what transformation is about. How do you create the culture that creates the right context for the manifestation to be embraced by the organization? Because if you don't have that, you're in trouble. You're fundamentally in trouble because nothing is going to happen. Right? And there are, again, three aspects to this. Surprise, surprise. Which are there. The first one, which is this piece, is interestingly got nothing to do with the organization. It's the intrapersonal context of the leader or the leaders. Right? It's how do I or how do we as leaders think about ourselves? Because that conditions everything. If we as leaders think ourselves in a limited way, we are not nearly going to be successful in creating the context for the organization. And there are two aspects to this. The first one is this thing called the declaration of identity. There's a declaration of identity. Now, what does that mean? It's the declaration that I am a powerful creator of new things. Because if I don't believe I'm a powerful creator, I'll actually live into a very narrow, limited way of life. I say, hey, I'm just a manager. I can't make things happen. It is what it is. The organization is too wide. Nothing's going to shift. Look at everyone else. So the first thing is just the declaration of identity that I am a powerful creator. And if you don't do that as a leader or a leadership team, you're not going to succeed. Right? And it's really interesting that we don't spend enough time with leaders really talking about how powerful do you believe you are? And that conversation is really important, right? The other piece which is really important is working on the wounds that exist within an organization, within the leaders. And it could be wounds about betrayal, it could be wounds about feeling incapable, all kinds of wounds, because you have to work with the intrapersonal context of the leaders, because that conditions whether you can create the context or not. That's step one. The second piece you need to work on is the organizational context. Which is all about the ability to create an attraction within the organization for your desire. How do you create attraction? Right? This word attraction. Because there's many ways of creating attraction. Most leaders, the way they try and create an attraction, which is a completely silly analogy, is they take a butterfly net and they try and go and catch butterflies individually. Right? And man, it takes forever and it never happens. Right? What you need to do is you need to create a garden that is so beautiful that the butterflies come themselves. Right? And leaders often don't take ownership of that, right? That attraction, the ability to create attraction. And there are two ways you can do it, right? There's only two ways you can really create attraction. One is that you create a desire that is so powerful that people get really excited by it, right? That desire is so exciting. And you can visualize that desire and tell a story around that desire in such a powerful way that people want to participate in that desire, in that process of creating that desire. Right? That's the way a lot of the startups work, right? A lot of the startups, it's about whether it's a desire about making lots of money or it's about creating these products that really, really work. That's an attraction based on the desire. The other way you create attraction is by your personality. That you become such an attractive person that people want to work with you. Right? Either because you have been historically successful, or you have this amazing EQ, or you have something that people get attracted. And when you have both of those working, that's when you start really attracting to yourself, even when something is not tangible, people, so that the attraction becomes really powerful. Unfortunately, mandates don't work when you want to create attraction. Right? We came up with a strategy. How come the organization is not taking ownership of it? Right? So that's the second piece. And then the third piece is the culture. And we've talked to many of you guys in this room about culture, but this is a slightly different conversation about culture. Because there are three aspects of culture which are really, really important in this whole conversation. The first one is about harmonizing engagement with discipline. Now, often organizations talk about, when you ask them about your culture, they'll say, hey, we are highly engaged culture, we are highly disciplined. What our assertion is that these two need to work together. So what is engagement? Engagement is being willing to put 100% of yourself into everything and just stepping out there and just making things happen without a care in the world. Without a care in the world. Show me an organization that has a culture like that, where everyone is 100% engaged, where they are just completely unfettered. Now that is a great experience. However, that's not enough, because if you do that, there's a very high likelihood that you're going to go fly off the road, because you're going to drive the car so fast that you're just going to completely create a crash. Discipline is really important to condition the engagement. Often people talk about discipline by itself, but discipline by itself is actually really constraints an organization. It actually creates bureaucracy and limitations in the way people show up. But discipline, when it's working in conjunction with engagement, is what is an appropriate culture, because that allows for an expansion, but within some guardrails. It's like driving a car. Discipline is like the brake of the car, engagement is like the accelerator. If all you press is the brake, the car goes nowhere. If all you press is the accelerator, you have an accident. What you have to do is create a culture which creates the right balance between the acceleration and the brake. And very often organizations don't have that balance right. But creating that balance becomes really, really key. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is combining the drive to overcome with humility and surrender. Now these two also seem completely contradictory. Drive to overcome, and I'm just going to put S here as surrender. Can we do that? Can you have a drive to overcome along with humility and surrender? So what is a drive to overcome? There are organizations that use the language of war and winning and beating the opposition and all of that stuff. That has a real important place in organizations, because you need that energy of this determination to be able to overcome and make things happen come what may. But if it is not conditioned by humility and surrender, what happens? What is the dark side of that energy of battle and winning and all of that stuff? What's the dark side? Arrogance. So the one side is this battle energy of winning and all of that stuff, which the shadow side is one is arrogance, the other is too much attachment and becoming completely blind to anything else that's possible. Humility and surrender is learning that even while you're doing all of this and you're doing everything you can, that you can't know everything. You cannot know everything. And you have to have the humility and the willingness to surrender, to say, you know what? There are things beyond my control, there are things beyond me that if I don't give in to, I will never have any of that magic happen. So it's a surrender to something bigger than you. And it's a humility to know that, even as I'm trying to overcome, I have to have the humility to know that not everything is in my control. That's the way we think about it. And organizations that can balance both of these are the ones that really create a transformed culture that can really create the context for an organization to transform.